Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome to my YouTube channel. It's been a busy few days, so I'm ready for some creative time, and I thought I would pop by, and when I haven't done any projects or I haven't had any creative time for a couple of days, I always turn to my journal because I can just have a play in there. So this is my Pink Pig journal, my A5 one, and I'm just going to pick a page and decide what I'm going to do. No idea. As you can see, I've got texture paste on that one, but no idea what I'm going to do or what page I'm going to work on, or whether I've got a page spare. That's the one I did recently. I just love that. Absolutely love that. I love filling in my journal. It's great fun. I could put one there and do it in blues, couldn't I? Yes, so I've got blues and browns here. So why don't we just, there you go, there's my colour scheme. I didn't know what I was going to do, but let's go for blues and browns. I've got lumps and bumps on there, but it's all topsy-turvy, but I can use my hardback book. I've just kept an old book that I can just put underneath if I want to stamp. So I've got a couple of stamps on my desk, so let's have a look what we've got. I obviously used this in my previous journal, but I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use this one. Why not? Bloom and Grow, because I've just had new stock of that because it was out of stock, so why not? Let's just place Bloom and Grow TE42. Let's place that back in the packaging, and just so you can see what that looks like, this is the Bloom and Grow here. I think it's a beautiful stamp for an A7 stamp, you know, quite a good size. Let's not bring that plastic out. Okay, so I've got my acetate. Now don't pull your stamp. I'm pulling at the acetate here, not the stamp. So I can have a play with my acetate if I wish. Let's have a play. Let's just have a play because we feel like it. So I'm going to colour the poppies in blue. So I'll tell you what, excuse me, I actually swallowed a cup of tea. And it went down the wrong way. And you know, I've been coughing for about an hour since. So you'll have to excuse me if I do this funny coughing. So I'm going to take this stamp, and I'm going to use a big acrylic block because it's quite a biggish stamp. So you can see you can have it whichever way you want, and I'm going to have it this way because it's my prerogative. And I'm going to colour it in blue. So I'm going to use Twilight Versifying Clair. Nice dark blue. And you can see, again, lots of tapping just to make sure I've got plenty of ink on there. No rushing. Let's not rush. And then we'll add this here, because we'll extend this a little bit as well. So I've got that hardback book underneath there to make it a little bit easier for me to stamp, especially when I'm using my journal and it's got lots of lumps and bumps on there. So let's just give that a little bit of time just to make that impression. Just give that some time. Just lovely. And I can see I've missed a little bit here, but that's fine. We can sort that out, not a problem. So what am I going to do now? Am I going to extend this? Let's have a look. We're going to, yes, let's extend this. So let's add some more of the Twilight. So I'm going to extend the stamp. let's have this like there. So I'm just extending that stamp. And don't worry about if you miss a little bit there, we can just cut that out. We can cut it out and add it as a little tiny bit of dimension to the page. So don't worry about that too much. But if you are, you could easily use your stamping platform. And if you use your stamping platform, well, then you can just go back in and stamp again. So it's not too much of a problem. So I've got this extended now. There we go. Do I want to extend a little bit more? Let's lift the book in here. You see, I can play with the stamp a little bit. Let's just add a little bit more. So you can make it so that you extend the design a little bit. It doesn't have to be the way the stamp is, just that one sort of swag. It can be extended quite easily if you want it extended. So it's lovely just to extend the design a little bit, just to make it look a little bit more interesting. So we can also add to this as well. So let me just grab my spare pieces of white card I was going to say. And there's not many of them. I very rarely have any scrap card now because I use it all. So we can just stamp a couple. So we've got a little bit of dimension. And I've obviously got ink somewhere. So let's add this image. So if you miss a little bit, don't worry, because you can just add a little bit of dimension. There we go. So I've got the floral here. So let's do a couple. And the idea is that you can extend your stamps if you wish. It's just a lovely way to just extend your design. It doesn't have to be the way it's designed on the packaging. It's a lovely way just to extend things. And also I love my journal because it's where I can really have a play with things. So I want to sort of extend this a little bit more. So I'm going to take the ivy here from a myriad of designs. So let's just move that out of the way. So on this myriad of designs, we've got this lovely ivy here. So that means I can extend the design a little bit and just change that up a little bit. Let's bring in my hardback book. And you can see why it's difficult. Let me show you. Underneath my page is these lumps and bumps, because those are all cut out. But there's no way I'm going to sort of not add stuff to a page just because it's got lumps and bumps on. So even though I've got this book behind it, it's got lumps and bumps on there. So it's a little bit harder when you've got lumps and bumps, but that doesn't stop me. So I'm going to take my ivy now, and I'm going to use my black ink. I am using black, aren't I? Yes. So I'm going to use my Nocturne ink. And what I can do is I can just spend a little bit of time extending. So let's have a little bit there. So I can spend a little bit of time extending. Yes, I can feel the lumps and bumps in here. I can spend some time just extending that design. So the ivy will extend what I have. Obviously, we're going to colour in these florals as well. So don't, you know, just trust in the process. So let's just extend there. So just trust in your process. So my page is definitely lumpy and bumpy. Let's do it again. And I love this little ivy stamp just for adding some extra little touches wherever I want some little extra pieces. And don't forget, we're going to add a little bit of dimension to those florals, the ones that we're cutting out here, that we've got here. We're going to add a little bit of dimension to those as well. But as we build the design, we can just think about what we are doing. So we're just building the design at the moment. So let's have some colouring. So I want, what shall we do? Let me just have a look at my distress pencils. So which one is this? I think this is set 6. Set 6. What have you got? I've got a broken china in there in set 6 of the distress. So let's take broken china. What else have you got? Blueprint sketch. So that can be like my dark colour. Well, we'll just use them 2 colours anyway. What have I got in the other? Let's have a look in set 4. What colour are you? Ground espresso. Scattered straw. What's that one? Tea dye. Just press the pencil, Tracy, and it comes up. So, tea dye. This should be set 4. Yeah, set 4 and set 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some colour just around my image, and I'm just going to get my round brush and see what that looks like. Now I just want a little bit of creative time and just enjoy myself. No pressure. I just want to enjoy what I'm doing. And can you see, I'm not particularly worried about the fact. Let's just add a little bit of water. Now, because these are woodless, I don't have to worry about coming in and it's already wet. It doesn't really matter. So I can add that dark just around. So it doesn't matter that my page is already wet. Let's pick up some of that pigment. And I'm going to colour my florals, so I'm not too concerned about the fact that some of the tea dye hits the florals. That doesn't bother me at all, because we're going to go over that. So to make it easier for yourself, don't worry about, like for instance, I can go straight over the black, because that's not going to be affected at all. And by now you know that I go for easy colouring methods. Look at the pigment in that. Obviously, it's a bit easier for you if you turn your page So you can see Tracy's not being super careful about where I colour. I'm going straight over those ivies. Straight over there. So by picking up the pigment from my pencil, I'm picking up that neat pigment, and look how strong the colour is. Look how long it continues for, that strong pigment. And then I'm just using the tinted water just to blend that out. So the tinted water just helps me to blend that out. And I just go in there, pick up that neat, look, that's lovely and neat there. So you've got that dark pigment, and then I can just blend that out. Pick up the neat pigment, and then you can blend that out. And don't be in too much of a rush when you're doing your colouring, because you want that to you want to take some time, just so that you've got the darkest pigment just near your florals. And then you can just blend that out into nothing. So you can see I'm just adding some of that darker pigment just closer to the floral. So just pick up that dark pigment, and I want that to be near the floral. So I just pick some of the dark up just so that it's darker, and it brings it to life the minute you just add a little bit of that darker pigment a little bit closer to the edges of your floral. It brings everything to life. You can't get much easier than that for colouring. But that dark edge just makes everything pop. And for me, when I'm having a little bit of time, for me, it isn't about making something super quick. If we're doing our fringes and we literally only got a little bit of time, the fringes are perfect, just not only for experimenting, but also if you really have only got a short amount of creative time, well, you can spend that doing your fringes. Now I'm really relaxing and getting into this now. And what I'm trying to show you is there's nothing complicated about what I'm doing here. I'm not doing any complicated colouring. All I'm doing is, look, add a little bit of dark where that edge is. You can take a little bit off if you want. And then just blend that out. Just so that you've got your dark area just by the edge of each. And then you can just blend that out. You can pick your diluted water. You can see here this lovely dark edge. Just makes everything pop. You can pick this up with another piece of card if you wish, just so that, but it just even without colouring anything, doesn't that bring it to life? This dark edge here. Oh, I love it. I love it. Yes, and I know I've spent 20 minutes faffing, but for me that is part of the fun. So I can easily come in once I've coloured my florals and just add a little bit more should I wish. So let's give this a wipe. You can mop that up with another piece of card if you wish. Let's give that. Can you see how much pigment's in there? Just wonderful. So you can just soften the edge, or you can just give your card a little bit of a spritz and then just soften the edge. You can just leave that water on there just so that that softens a little bit. You can just take your time doing that. And of course I'll put my card onto this soaking wet area. There we go. So I'm going to, I just want to have a look at the colours. So if I'm not sure particularly about what colour I've got, pick up the neat pigment and just have a look at whether you want to use the colours that you've picked. So let's pick your colours and just have a look. So let me just, I've got a bit of moisture. What's the evergreen bow look like? Evergreen bow. I'm in sets 4 and set 6. What colour's that? Oh, chipped sapphire. This is the problem with me. I'm like, ooh. Which set's this? Set 4. So chipped sapphire. Oh yes, so chipped sapphire, absolutely. With the broken china. Yes. And let me just rinse my brush. Look at the pigment in there. Lovely. And let's have a look at the evergreen bow, how green it is. And you know, I might use a bit of that as well. We'll see. So let's take the chipped sapphire and I'm going to add, let's bring this so you can actually see what I'm doing. Now I've stamped with the VersaFine Clair Twilight, and because I've stamped with the VersaFine Clair Twilight, that's not going to move. It's not going to go anywhere. So that's rather handy. I'm not going to colour the leaves, it's just the actual floral. So then I'm going to go to my, so I use the chipped sapphire, then I'm going to go to broken china. And at the moment I'm just initially laying down a little bit of colour and it's just scribbling down a little bit of that colour. So let's add a little bit of broken china. So I'm going to grab my water then. Let's grab my water. And I always have my, hang on a minute, let's just clean that. My pencils are rolling everywhere. So I always have a piece of kitchen roll by because it's just really handy to just keep dipping in onto the kitchen roll if I've got a little bit too much moisture. So I've got the broken china and I'm going to come, look at that pigment now, so take off the extra moisture and then you can just blend this out. So pick up that neat pigment, go into the colour you've already laid onto the floral and just blend this out. And there's not much area to colour. It's really easy just to colour. And obviously we can add a little bit of depth to there. So I'm coming in, I'm going straight into the darker colour and just blending that out. So pushing into that darker colour. There we go. You're not going to get much easier than colouring like that. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of depth to mine. So I'm going to pick up the chipped sapphire. I'm going to add a little bit of the darker pigment. So I'm just picking up that neat pigment. Nice, rich, dark colour. And you can see I haven't really blended that out yet because I've got that rich, dark pigment on there. So I'm going to take the tinted water and then I'm just going to blend that out. Can you see the amount of times I touch that kitchen roll? So we'll come in again with the chipped sapphire. And just add that chipped sapphire. Then go into the tinted water. You can see I took the extra off. There we go. And then I'm going to grab my heat tool. And I'm just going to give that a little bit of a dry. If I give it a dry, that just means I can layer more pigment on the top. Okay, so it means then I can continue to add layers of that colour, especially if you use your paintbrush the right way up. So I'm going to take the broken china and I can come in with the broken china and you're just layering your colour. And you've got that lovely sort of rich pigment. And when we add our touches of white, you'll see that that will all come together. But there's definitely lots of pigment in there. There's lots of moisture on that bit there as well, which just drives me mad. I'm going to take a little bit, no, that's not right, Tracy, where have you gone? There it is. I'm going to take a little bit of the evergreen bow, whatever you want to call it. And you can see that's soaking wet, so I'm taking off that extra moisture. And then I'm just going to come in and just add a little bit of the evergreen bough. I'm just adding a little bit of the evergreen bough. And again, just keep dabbing if you're finding that you've got a little bit too much of anything on there. You know, if you're finding that look at that, the moisture is running away with you, just use that kitchen roll, because the kitchen roll is your friend. Let's just give that a dry again. So I want some sort of rich colour. And I will come in and we will add some touches of white to those as well. Obviously we've got florals on here that we may want to colour as well. I'm going right to the edge of that floral. Have I missed a bit there? I've done it on both of them, haven't I? Oh well, I can just leave that bit. So we're going to take the floral and we're just going to cut that out perfectly around the black edge. In other words, I'm not leaving a little white border like sometimes I do. And then we can just add our little, you can also sort of off center it a little bit. Oh, it does help if you can see. You can do it so that's sort of slightly off the center as well, so that it doesn't go directly on top of the floral if you wish. But you can see that obviously once we add these and we colour a little bit of the other areas as well, you can see it starts to come to life. There we go. And also you can leave these in place until there we go. In other words, you don't have to adhere them if you don't wish. You can just sort of leave them in place. But doesn't it look lovely with some of the flowers in white as well? But you can quite easily leave those in place. So what I'm going to do, because I can easily go over it if I don't like it, so let's add the book underneath. Obviously I've not stuck them florals down, so probably going to move about, but that's me all over. Let's lift up some of this pigment so we're not working with that pigment all over the place. I'm then going to take, so I need some water. Let's pick up our ivy stamp, and I'm going to just take my crayon, and the good thing is I can dip it in the water and it doesn't matter, but I'm going to add the pigment just to my ivy. There we go. And I just want to extend a little bit. And perfect. What you want is, you want it to, no, not you, but me personally, I want it to be quite loose to add to my arrangement. So it gives a nice loose feel to the arrangement, just to add some of the colours. And I can turn this all different ways and attach it in different places. You're not being too precise, so if I just attach that there, that's it. But it's just adding some of that blue there. Let's pick that pigment up. And then I'm leaving the blue on there, and let's pick up the evergreen bough. So I'm just getting some moisture on there. And this is not going to affect my pencils because they are woodless. So I'm just picking up a little bit. And this works quite nicely with silhouette stamps. So let's just, so it was if you were sort of doing second generation You can also spritz your stamp. Let's just get rid of the... And you can stamp again. Let me bring in this card. And you can stamp your second generation, third generation, fourth generation, fifth generation. So you can add lots of stamping to your design. Now don't forget, I'm just adding some of the pigment just to give me a loose bit of foliage here and there, just so that this is in the background. So at the moment I am just playing. I'm just adding some of the loose pigment just to the design, just so it's got that colour in the background. And there's that much of that pigment now. I think I need a new wipe. So always sort of take your book away and have a look at your design. So I'm going to stick the florals down because then I can add some touches of white as well. Let's add the, can't pick them up. Let's add the touches of white. And then this one. You don't want your layers too bulky. You really don't. You want to make sure that, you know, they're not sticking up too much, because you do want your page to close quite easily. So just make sure of that. So can you see you've got the blue with the white with the brown. So you've got to decide, you know, whether you want to add your cutout pieces or not. Obviously we can add more pigment as well. What I don't want to do, can you see I've got all this beautiful brown down here and nothing up here? So we want to bring a little bit of that pigment just in the other area as well. Let's place this down. Where's the ivy stamp? Let's just that way. So I want to bring some of this pigment up here, but in a more natural, I can feel all the lumps and bumps under here. Underneath, can you see this page underneath? It's got texture paste and everything else as well, so I can feel all the lumps and bumps under there. But what I'm going to do is, let's take the tea dye pencil and I'm just going to scribble some of the pigment. Let's scribble some of this pigment on here because I don't want it to be too false. And let's just take, whoops, kitchen roll, because I don't mind the odd bit of colour underneath my next page, but I don't want it to be too much. There we go. Now I've got this pigment on here and I just want to be able to move that pigment just so that I've got some of that colour just at the top, just so it's a little bit more natural. And you can see I've just got that kitchen roll under there, just so that I can make sure that it doesn't go on the next page too much. But I love having a little play. Plus, I find this is where I tend to play with my product if I'm using my journal. because if you hated the whole thing, gesso over it all and start the page again. So I'm just moving this pigment just so that it moves a little bit. That's it. Just so that we've got that pigment. Let's make sure that that's it. Just so I've got a little bit more natural pigment at the top. So let's give this a little dry. So I'm not going to dab this too much because I want to keep some of that colour. It just means that it's more considered with having some of that colour at the top of the page. So let's bring this page down. Can you see? It's just a little bit more considered. There we go. So that we've got some of that pigment just at the top of the page as well. I'm then going to, so I want my poppy stamp because I want the word poppy. So I want the poppy stamp. So I've got the word poppy on here. Now, obviously, I don't know whether this is going to stamp too brilliantly with all the lumps and bumps underneath. But again, I'm not concerned because I can easily cut that out. Because this is our journal, we can have a little bit of cut out pieces. Let's bring in our page here. Let's bring in poppy. Just here. Now, the page is still wet. It's not completely dry. That's lovely. Why do I keep putting the stamps? You'll have to excuse me with my arms going across. So what I'm going to do then is, I'm going to leave this in place. And then I'm going to pick up the acetate, Tracy. I'm going to pick up the acetate. And then I'm going to sort of extend this. I think I'll just put it down there. And unfortunately, I cannot pick up. There we go. So I'm going to need some scrap of paper. Now, don't rush your journaling. Your journaling's for you to experiment. See if you like things. So it's a lovely way just to experiment with things. So I'm going to take the Twilight ink again. There we go. So I'm going to take the Twilight ink. Let's move this out of the way. And I'm going to ink sort of the bottom area. I'll show you. So I'm using Twilight again. And I've inked this area here because I'm just deciding, I think it's better if I stand up because I can actually see what I am doing. And I am going to faff for England. There we go. And the reason I'm standing up is because I can just see a little bit better. Again, I've got those lumps and bumps underneath my page. Beautiful. Just so that you bring the design into your page. And the problem with me is I play so much, I could just go on and on and on. So then, don't want to bring a little bit. I just want to extend it a little bit more. I know I'm a pain, but I'm going to, let me just clean all this. So I'm cleaning the whole part of that stamp. I'm then going to just dab with some kitchen roll, and I'm then going to take the bottom 2 little bits. You should play with your stamps just so that you get the most out of them. And then I'm going to bring this down a bit. There we go. Just so it looks like it's extended a little bit. There we go. So let's move the book. Move this. Just so that we've extended our design a little bit. Just so it's extended a little bit. Spot the person that's having too much fun. I'm then going to take, is it T-E? You can always spot the person having too much fun. T-E, there we go, T-E 25. So what I'm doing is I'm mixing and matching stamps. So let's take T-E 25. Again, another stamp that's back in stock. T-E 25, Moments in Time. And I'm going to take the little light bulb, small acrylic block, and then I'm going to take that twilight, and I'm just using the edge of the twilight just to add a little bit of colour. This is going to, it's called Stand Up. So I'm just extending the sort of collaged elements. There we go. So I've got my light bulb. Place that there. And then we're going to add a little bit more to our pieces. So let's just give everything a little bit of a dry. Bring in our crayons, our pencils again. So I want paintbrush, blueprints, no, chipped sapphire. Told you I was good at the colours. Chipped sapphire. So I'm going to pick up that chipped sapphire. Loading my brush with the pigment. Take off the extra moisture. And then I'm just going to bring in the darkest colour just to the floral. Let's bring in that darkest colour. And again, I am not going to colour all of it. I'm going to leave some of that white. I'm then going to pick up the broken china. Up that pigment from the broken china, and because I've got this round brush, it's really good because it holds just enough moisture without me having to add more. And what I've got there is just the first layer of colour. Let's give that a dry. So I'm leaving some of the areas white. So let's come back in with the, that's not it, chipped sapphire. Come in with that dark colour again. And now I'm also going to add some, and that's got too much moisture on there. So I'm going to add some of the chipped sapphire to my light bulb. And then I'm going to come back to the floral because we've dried that. And I can now come in and add another layer of that dark pigment because I've dried it. I can't add it here because I've not dried it yet. So then I'm going to take the broken china and we'll add a little bit of the broken china just here. Let's take this broken china here. And again, I'm just adding that layer of colour. And you can see all the pigment in there. Now, if I dry this, because I want to add another layer to the light bulb. Now, because it's my playtime, I just don't rush. So I'm going to pick up the chipped sapphire again. We're going to come in, really nice dark edge there. I can still come in because I've dried and just add a little bit of the dark colour here, like so. Rinse that off. Then we can come and get our broken china. Don't do it over your project like I'm doing, because you can actually flick some of the pigment onto your project, which is fine if that's what you want. Not so fine if that isn't what you want. Pick up that. So I've got layers now on my floral. But you could also mop this up onto another card. Let's give that a little bit of a dry. And then we're going to come to the little bit of a green colour. And then just add a little bit of the green. That is not green, Tracy. For goodness sake, where's it gone? Here it is. Do you know, I was thinking, can't see much difference in the green. This is the green. So let's just give this, there we go, little touch of the green. Just to add a little bit. So I'm adding a little touch to the floral, just a little bit, just to give it a little bit more life. And then I'm just going to just blend the colours a little bit more. There we go. We can also give that a dry. That's it. So what I've done now is it's sort of got some connection. It's not just plonked here and no connection. So the only thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my tea dye, because I can't speak. Take the tea dye. I'm going to pick up the tea dye pigment. Lots of pigment on that brush. A little bit more water. And then I'm going to bring that dark colour just around, just so it's got some of that dark pigment. Then we'll use that water. Again, look how much pigment is there. Just pick up that tinted water. And I can just, there you go. And just scrub that out until that works. So just bring that out a little bit more. So we're going to come and just add, again, I do take off the excess if I'm finding it's running away with me. So So I spend a little bit of time. Let's use that tinted water. Just around that floral. And you can see that tinted water really helps me just to look how dark that is. And I can use that tinted water just to drag that out a little bit and drag that out as far as I wish. And you can make it just a little bit darker down here, just so that it makes more sense. Don't worry if a little bit of your blue comes into the background. Just adds to the design a little bit. But now it's sort of, it doesn't sort of, it pops a little bit more as well. And then the only thing I'm going to do is just give the page a light mist. It just softens everything. If you don't want that pigment, just put your pencils on there. It just softens that a little bit. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to add some text. And the poppy text is perfect because it's got some text here and it's just perfect for what I am doing. So I'm going to use... Now you could come in and you know this is wet, the tea dye. So my pencil is wet. So you could add some sort of soft text just with the wet pigment, just so that it coordinates with your background. We can add some more defined pigment afterwards, but just so that it's got that softness of text. You can add you can have first and second generation. And I love how you can just dip these into water and I don't have to panic. Now you're not necessarily looking for something, oh, I can't read that. It's just there. Can you see? It's very watery. You can add your second generation, third generation. How many times I can use this ink, look, and I can just, look, I've got water on there now. And I can add a little bit more. It's amazing how far this pigment is going. I'm just using a little bit of water, look, that's on there, using my finger. And I've got that sort of watery text that makes it look a little bit more botanical. Just give your stamp a little bit of a clean. Now let's give that a dry. So just give everything a dry so your page isn't just sopping wet. Like so. And then I'm going to take my Portobello ink, which is my VersaFine Clair. But before I do that, I've always got a piece of scrap paper nearby. So let's just take the Portobello, just give it a little test. And the only reason I'm using it off the acrylic block is so it's a little bit more natural. That's it. So it's a little bit darker, the Portobello, but it's not black. So then I can just add a little bit more definition in certain areas with some of the text that's a little bit darker. So I can just give it a little bit more definition. I'll hold this up just so that you can see exactly what I have. So I've got a little bit more definition on some of that text. I'll hold this up so you can see the detail in more detail. So I'm using that Portobello. So I've got that watery background, look at that watery background with the stamping with the distress pencils. Look at that. So I think, let's just add it again. And I can just take little bits of the text. So a little bit here. I can take a little bit there by just pressing a little bit of the text, just to give it, and I think that's enough, a little bit of definition. I always don't want to lose my stamps, so I tend to make sure I place those back. So you can see I've got sort of the watery, but then I've got more definition with the VersaFine Clair. I'm going to add, I bet I haven't left it out, no. I'm going to take my bleed proof white. Now I should have, I mean, I've got super fine, look at the length of this one. I don't even know what make this is, like number 3. Look at the size of the point on the brush. Number 3. It's one of them really long, fine brushes. I've had these, I can't tell you how long. I don't even know whether that's going to work, but let's pick up that pigment. That's because I've just found that. And let's see if it will. I think we need to add a little, oh, there's the water. A little bit of water, just so we can loosen that up a little bit. Oh yeah, it's very fine, that is. Which is kind of handy. So just add a little bit of my pigment, and I'm using a little bit of water just so I can add a little bit of the pigment. Let me just see if I can add. I want a little bit of pigment here as well, just so that it's got the, let's add some dots there. It just definitely helps by having some touches of white. Just brings that to life again. That's the thinnest brush I've ever seen in my life. But it does help you to bring a little bit of detail. To the design. And it's a very sort of, because it's so fine, I mean, look at the length of the brush. I don't even know where I had these from. It must have been Amazon. So I'm just, there's loads of pigment on there. So I'm going to come in and just add a little bit. Because if I come in, I need something a bit thicker now. How many brushes can one person have? Oh, you'll be surprised. So I want some thicker pigment, which is this. So my brush is coated in that. Just so that it's a bit bigger. Just to add a little bit more. Honestly, I could faff for ages, but that's me all over. Okay. We've probably got enough pigment here. We could actually splatter some as well. So this is Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. And there's lots of pigment there. So rather than just waste it all, let's grab our fan brush, which is where's the big fan brush? Oh, it's there. Let's try this one. It's a little bit thicker, this fan brush is. It does exactly as it says on the tin. It is bleed proof. And I just splatter very gently with this, just so that I don't end up, I still end up with bits everywhere, but I'm just splattering very gently. I still like to use my Posca pen as well. So I'm going to use my Posca pen as well. So I'm going to give that a little bit of a shake. And then I'm just going to give that a dry, just so that we don't get too much reaction with the oxide. And it doesn't matter if your page curls, because obviously you're going to close that book. So the minute you've closed that book and it's been in there a couple of days, it soon flattens out again. I'm then going to take my Inktense pencil. Let's move this so you can see. I'm going to move my Inktense pencil just to highlight the poppy text a little bit more. And then you frantically look for a brush that you haven't added a million other things to. And then we'll just fan that out, just so that it's a little bit softer, a little bit more water. Just to blend that out a little bit more. Wonderful. I now want to add a little beard as well, because that's me all over. So let's take that book again, place that under my page, and then I want to go to TE44 and grab my little bird. Spot the person that's having too much fun. So I now want my black ink. This is where you need to make sure that you've got the correct ink pad. Take that black ink, and then where you're going to add, half the fun is deciding where you're going to stand your little beard. I'm going to have one here. Wonderful. And then I want the other one facing the other way. And did you notice I was giving that a little bit longer in time, just to make sure that ink absorbs on there. So let's take that. And then you just want to, of course, I'm going to add a little beard there. And can you see, I don't stamp and then lift the stamp too soon. But now, let's bring this out. I'm building up that composition to bring it more to life. Just love this. And all it is me playing. Now, you see, then I think to myself, is there room just to make it look a bit more sort of whimsical? So let's take TE50. So you've got TE50, which got lots of elements on here. So let's take TE50. And this is why I end up with loads of stamps on my desk, because I just enjoy playing and I can't help myself. I'm just going to maybe the smaller one. You know when I'm having too much fun. So I'm going to use the Portobello ink, and I've got this really tiny mushroom now, and I can just add little mushrooms to give it a sort of little bit of a whimsical touch. Let's just add a little mushroom here. And these are just your finishing touches. Again, you don't have to do it if you don't wish. And then just to make that, so we've got a little bit of a mushroom that's a little bit shorter, let's just dab that. And then this time we'll use the Portobello, but we'll just give it a shorter stem. So let's do that down here. So I'm not even using my book now. So I'm making my mushroom with a little bit of a shorter stem. That's it. So I've just given that a little bit of a shorter stem. Then I'm going to grab my, which brush are you going to grab? I think I'm going to grab that one. I'm still going to grab the bleed proof white. You can actually put some of this into a container. Look at that, it's still got pigment in there. And you can sort of add the water again, even though it's dried out, and reactivate it. So let's add a little bit of white there. So I'm just adding a little sort of touch. Let's just make sure it's not too. Just little touches of the white. And if you're anything like me, you spend ages just adding little bits of white because you just can't help yourself. You get carried away. You quite enjoy yourself and you think, oh, and a bit of white there and a bit of white here, and it's just what you do. There we go. Move them out of the way. And what I like about my journal is that I've then used my products. So I'm just going to finish that off by adding a little bit of black of my Inktense pencil just around the light bulb a little bit. Just to give that a little bit more shading. just so that's shaded a little bit more. And then I'm probably just going to add a little bit of that pigment just under there, little tiny bit here. And this is why your journal is so much fun, because you can just play. And then that is your page finished. Just having a little play, and you can see all the details. If you wanted to, you could easily take it up another level. Just give that a dry. And if you're really enjoying yourself, you can easily come in. There you go. And for instance, this is an indigo blue. You can easily come in and just add a little bit of pencil work to give them your detail even more definition. You can come in and just add a little bit more darkness should you wish. It's entirely up to you, but you can keep going as much as you want. You can even use your white Prisma pencil and you can add a little bit more white with your Prisma pencil as well, just in areas, just to give a little bit more lightness, especially where that light bulb is. Just makes it shine a little bit more. This is and I can add a little bit of white to my bird. So just have a look at your design and see what you're happy with, because there's always ways you can keep taking it up a level. So I hope you've enjoyed a little bit of creative time with me, and I hope you enjoy giving that a little bit of a go. So love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.